Hey everybody, that one guy here. They just pushed patch 11.02 to live servers. If you've been following along with the changes for Arcane and Mages in general in beta and everything they've been doing for the War Within, then none of this should be news to you. But if you haven't been following those changes or you just want to hear someone talk through them, then that's exactly what we're about to do right now. Before I jump into that, I do want to point out that Porum has written a great article about the two hero talents that Arcane has in the War Within. Does a good job of comparing them to each other and giving you a look at what to expect from either. They're both going to be great options to play. Obviously, hopefully they tune the numbers to be a lot closer together so that you don't feel obligated to play one over the other due to the damage that it provides. But I'd encourage you to give that a read just so you can have a little more insight into the two hero talents. I'll link that in the description. And as always, a great place for information is going to be Wowhead, Icy Veins, and the Mage Discord. I always link those and will link them again in the description, including this article, as well as the link to these patch notes if you haven't seen them or don't know where to find it yourself. Without further ado, let's just jump into it. So Reabsorption now heals for 3% maximum health. It was 5%. That's a talent tied to your mirror images, right? As a choice node between reduplication and reabsorption. So now you would get a little less as those dissipate. Maybe that was more of a PvP thing. I haven't seen that taken a lot. Doesn't mean you don't take it ever. But again, they're just trying to minimize the amount of healing that DPS specs can do for themselves. So hopefully putting more of it back on the healers as they're trying to hopefully get further away from big bursty spiky damage and actually have it more about maintaining health bars than hopefully just preventing someone from dying instantly. Cryofreeze now causes ice block or ice cold if you take that talent to heal for 25-50 instead of 40 and 80. I think that's a great thing, right? That's this talent. So 80% of your health is a lot. That's a lot of HPS for a DPS, especially a mage, to have. I think reducing it to 25-50 will also help dumb people like myself. Because if you're like me and you're like an 80% heal, I got to make sure I don't waste that HPS, because I used to main a healer, so I'm always thinking about heals. I gotta make sure I don't waste the HPS and use it at like the perfect times. Like there is no perfect time. You should really just be focusing more on either the immunity you get from Ice Block or that 70% DR. That's a big deal. So I think it's good. It might free up one talent point, right? I don't know if you want to go all the way into it for that 50%. That's still pretty good, but I think that's great to kind of reduce the amount of healing the DPS specs can do, and hopefully again put the emphasis more on healers. Mass Barrier now is a 3-minute cooldown instead of 2 minutes. I think that's fine, right? Again, they were doing a lot of reducing the effectiveness and impact of raid cooldowns from other specs or in general, so they're just continuing more in that direction with Mass Barrier. It just means you have to push it less, right? So that's okay. Now for Arcane specifically, clear casting is now learned at level 10. It was 11. Not really sure the impact. Maybe speedrunners will know better. You still don't get to talent into Arcane Missiles until level 11, so I guess you'll have clear casting for a whole level before you get Arcane Missiles. I guess you can, use clear casting on Arcane Explosion type stuff. Mastery for both Blast and Barrage was buffed by a considerable amount. So in a previous video I talked about the stats that we use and we take, and obviously they're leaning into Mastery for Arcane, which I personally like. So this is going to bump Mastery back up as a valuable stat. That's okay with me. Buffing Blast, Missiles, and maybe a net nerf to Barrage. So a little bit up on Blast, a little bit up on Missiles. They nerfed just the flat overall damage of Barrage because they don't want you sending 0 charge barrages, basically. So if you don't have any charges, it's going to hit like a wet noodle. That's fine. But then they buffed it from 90%, or sorry, from 30% to charge to 90% per charge. So that's technically like a 300% buff. So instead of it adding an additional 120% spell power for a 4-charge barrage, it's now a 360% spell power, 4-charge barrage. I think overall it might be like a slight nerf, but it just means still further emphasizing 4-charge barrage is great. Arcane Familiar, alright, little bird, does more damage, okay. Orb reduced damage, it's okay, I'm pretty sure that one's still uncapped AoE, right? And so it doing reduced damage, that's fine. It's more of just kind of like a neat thing to get damage from as opposed to a priority. Arcane Barrage is still a priority. Arcane Echo damage increased by 25%, so that is... oh, my face is in the way. Get me over there. That would be this talent. It used to be a bigger deal when we had Nether Tempest, because that was always firing off, and so it was always proccing the damage from Echo. Without something like that, you're getting less value out of Echo, so they are still making it a valuable talent and buffing its damage, so I think that's awesome. Arcane Echo now has a 0.2 second cooldown between procs. I think that's a hero talent thing. I think the splinters from Spellslinger could proc it way too much and was giving it extra value. So those two probably go hand in hand. It's like, hey, Spellslinger, you'll probably get a few less procs than you would normally from your splinters, but we're going to make those procs more valuable. High voltage changes. So they've changed it to where the initial hit has it's cut in half on its chance to give you a charge, but the hits from arcane missiles after them, my brain turned off for a whole second, have an increased chance. So basically this means you should safely fall between 1 and 2 pretty much every time, right? They're making sure that, well, it's because your first one having a 20% chance, that's all well and good. When at max, that means if you let all of them go, I think that might be up to like a 55% chance to get one charge, if my math is good there. And now it means that between all 8 missiles, it sounds like you have an 80% chance to get one charge. So you should really get one, or you have really bad luck, and preferably 2. If my math is wrong, I do apologize, former math teacher. So I'm pretty sure I'm right, but again, this just means they're trying to kind of even out the consistency of how many charges you get with high voltage. Aether Attunement nerf, boo, because we're already clipping missiles even when we have Aether Attunement, whereas in Season 3, that would be the only time you made sure to full channel your missiles, was when you had Aether Attunement. Now, all it does is an AoE kind of lets you know that you will for sure get 4 charges and very quickly. So I guess they're just trying to make sure it's not uber powerful, but that'd be a cooler ability to let full channel from doing a crap ton of damage. And again, Aether Attunement is, ooh, it's right next to my face. It's that one. That's the thing that every 3 times you consume clear casting, your missiles spread. Concentration, a talent that I don't think anyone uses. Maybe you do, and maybe this is huge for you. You're like, yes! That's the talent that means you have a chance for your Arcane Blast to be free, and my face is in the way again. It's this talent over here, right? Has a small chance to make your next one free. So now they're saying roughly that'll be 3 procs per minute. Someone out there thinks that's the best news ever. I think. Maybe. Magi Spark now has a 2-second grace period after the initial Arcane Missile proc. This is a big deal for the most part, because what was happening was, you know, Magi Spark is supposed to do double damage for your first blast, barrage, and missiles, right? That's how it reads. I'm going to move my face again. That's how it reads, is that they'll do basically double damage. They'll do another 100%. Well, for missiles, it was only the first tick of it. Remember, there's 8 missiles that fly in a 2-second span. It was only doubling the first little tick of it. So, like, that's not, obviously not the intention, and obviously not very awesome. So this change fixes that. We're now, like I said, they're adding a grace period. So basically from the first hit, that should mean the next 7 ticks of arcane missiles will also benefit from that double damage from Magi Spark. So good on you, devs. That was a smart move. Fixed an issue where Magi Spark damage echo window for arcane missiles and arcane barrage was shorter than Touch of the Magi's duration. I think that goes back to how they originally had Touch of the Magi. Sorry, not Touch of the Magi. Magi Spark. It was that once you exploded these, you got an additional like 12% or so spell power, right, or damage absorbed in Touch of the Magi for like 8 seconds. That was how it originally worked. So the sooner you could proc it inside of your Touch of the Magi window, the better, because that was again another stacking buff or stacking debuff. Well, then they changed it to just be like, you know what? It's just part of Touch of the Magi. It does extra damage. But I'm guessing somewhere in their code they forgot to remove that 8-second part, because it was true that if you did not barrage your missiles in that first 8 seconds of Touch of the Magi, so even if you sent it in the last 4 seconds, it didn't proc correctly. So this is fixing that. So again, another good thing, like making sure spells function the way they're intended to which is a big deal lately, and making sure that you can understand how they're supposed to play it, and then again, them just doing what they're supposed to. So that's good. Fixed an issue that was allowing procs such as Orb Barrage and Energy Reconstitution to generate clear casting. Not a huge deal. So that just meant that whenever you would Orb Barrage, so you'd send an orb with your barrage. Really cool talent. Again, if you're unfamiliar with that one, it is this one right here. A really awesome talent in AoE. Somewhat useful in single target. I mean, free damage is free damage that you don't have to actively work for. We'll see if it gets taken or not in the War Within. But again, really cool in AoE. And this is just then saying that was causing you to receive clear casting if that also procced, so another chance on a chance, but that was not intended. And then same thing for Energy Reconstitution. That's the thing that your new dot dematerialize, which you get from another precision. I feel like as I talk about these things, I gotta show you these things, which means I gotta move my face. Dematerialize is a dot that comes from your barrage and blast and other precisions. Energy Reconstitution can proc from that dot and do arcane explosions. And it's just saying that was also causing clear casting. So not something they intended, so changing that effect. And again, they have stated many times before that they're going to keep a close eye on clear casting. They know that's a big part of Arcane's core playstyle and core identity, so they want to make sure that you're proccing it just enough. They don't want you to be starved, but they obviously don't want you to be overflowing with it, because too little of something is very frustrating. Too much of something means it's not special. So I get what they're trying to do there. And then fixed an issue preventing Energized Familiar from granting mana. Woo! That was this talent, right? So it said has a small chance to grant you up to 2% of your maximum mana. Cool. So now you have a way. Mastery is more important. Mastery is your stat that increases your mana pool and your mana regen, as well as your overall arcane damage. So emphasizing mastery means more mana and more mana regen. Fixing this inside Energized Familiar means more mana return from your little bird blasting enemies. I like that talent. I will do whatever the Sims tell me to do, though, from raid bots, and tell me whatever talents are going to be the best. I do like that one. I hope it has a play in the War Within somewhere, because that's just cool, right? Having your little bird shoot off a bunch of different little bolts during your arcane surge, but also then being a way for you to just get passive mana back. I like that. I think that's awesome. But that's going to be it. That's the end of the arcane changes. There's more stuff on here for obviously fire and frost, and maybe in the future I'll be able to talk about those. But for me personally, I just know a lot more about arcane at the moment than I do for the other two. I dabble in them, but I wouldn't think I know enough to tell somebody how to do it. That's it. Again, I encourage you to go check out Porum's article on Wowhead. I will link that in the description. We're getting a lot closer to that pre-release, right? The early release on August 22nd. If you didn't get the early release, it's going to be August 26th for you. But we're closing in, and I'm very excited. And in the future, we'll talk about the hero talents and their impact on the gameplay. And I just think that's going to be awesome. If you have any questions or anything you want to say, comment below. Thanks for watching.